At 10:30 a.m., cruising high above the French Alps, an Airbus A320 was stable at 38,000 feet. Clear skies, smooth air, routine flight. Then, without a word, the aircraft began to descend. Air traffic control called, but there was no reply. Inside the cockpit, one pilot was breathing calmly. The other was locked outside. Within 10 minutes, 150 lives would be lost. Not to weather, not to mechanical failure, but to a decision made in complete silence. This is what really happened to Germanwings Flight 9525. On March 24, 2015, an Airbus A320 departed Barcelona for Düsseldorf. On board, 144 passengers and 6 crew members. The captain, 34 years old, experienced over 6,000 flight hours. The first officer, 27 years old, approximately 900 hours total time. Climb out was normal. At 10:27 a.m., the aircraft leveled at flight level 380. Autopilot engaged. Engines steady. Weather clear above the Alps. 3 minutes later, the captain left the cockpit for a brief restroom break. The cockpit door closed behind him. It would not open again. At 10:30, the first officer manually selected a new altitude, from 38,000 feet to 100 feet. He then set the autopilot to open descent mode. Thrust levers remained at idle. The aircraft began descending at approximately 3,000 feet per minute. There was no emergency, no technical malfunction. Every system responded exactly as commanded. Air traffic control noticed the deviation within minutes. They called the aircraft but received no answer. At 10:32, the captain requested re-entry using the standard keypad code. The cockpit door system began its normal 30-second unlock countdown. Inside, the first officer switched the door control to lock. This action overrode the emergency access request and prevented entry. The captain knocked, then pounded. CVR recordings captured him attempting to force the door. Inside the cockpit, the first officer said nothing. His breathing remained steady. The descent continued. Air traffic controllers attempted contact repeatedly on primary and secondary frequencies. French air defense also tried to reach the aircraft. Another nearby crew attempted radio contact. Still nothing. The aircraft accelerated. The first officer increased selected speed to 350 knots, near maximum operating speed. Descent rate increased beyond 3,500 feet per minute. At approximately 10:40, the ground proximity warning system activated. Terrain ahead, pull up. However, there was no corrective input. At 10:41, the aircraft impacted mountainous terrain near Le Vernet, France. The aircraft was destroyed instantly. There were no survivors. Investigators recovered the cockpit voice recorder first, then the flight data recorder. Both confirmed the same sequence. Manual altitude selection to 100 feet. Open descent mode engaged. Door switched to lock. No distress call. No system failure. The engines were operating normally until impact. Flight controls were functional. The descent was controlled, deliberate. Toxicology reports later found the presence of antidepressant and sedative medication in the first officer's system. Medical records showed he had been declared unfit for work by a physician, including a sick note covering the day of the accident. The airline had not been informed. The investigation revealed a history of depressive episodes dating back to his pilot training. His medical certificate had once been suspended. It was later reissued under monitoring conditions. In the months before the crash, he sought treatment for worsening psychological symptoms. Multiple doctors diagnosed possible psychotic depression, but strict medical confidentiality laws prevented disclosure to his employer. The system relied on self-reporting, and he did not report. The BEA concluded the crash was intentional, but it also identified systemic gaps: limited psychological oversight, inconsistent medical follow-up, over-reliance on pilot self-declaration, and cockpit door logic that allowed permanent lockout. In response, regulators introduced new measures: mandatory psychological evaluation before airline employment, random substance testing, stronger aeromedical oversight, and pilot support programs designed to encourage reporting without fear of automatic career loss. Germanwings 9525 was not lost to weather, not to mechanical failure, not to terrorism. It was lost because a system designed to protect the cockpit had no protection against the person inside it. 150 lives, 10 minutes of silence, and a tragedy that permanently changed aviation safety.
Learn more about aviation safety. Subscribe for more investigation videos.